Okay. Welcome to the next live class. This time actually live. Last time it didn't work out because I made it too complicated, but this is a very simple solution. Oops. Can you hear me? And can you see me well?
Yes, hello, Michael.
Hello, Amelia. Good. If you're new to this, you can ask any question you have. Ideally, this is about the problem you have with learning German. Yeah, and then I will do my best to show you how to tackle this so that you get out of this session being clear about it. Yeah, because there's nothing really in the German grammar or German language that is that complex that it cannot be made clear within an hour. Yeah. Whoever wants to talk first talks first, and you can always ask questions in the Zoom chat, not in the YouTube chat, and or raise your hand. I will just call you up whenever is a good moment. Yeah, and if you want to comment on something, you can also just drop a line in the chat. There's a question out there as well, which I will possibly not see in time, but you let me know. So, what is it you actually want to get out of this session today? Yeah, ideally, you already have thought of this a little bit because why would you join this? Actually, I can only see the answers afterwards. So yeah, well, you better let me know in the chat then. Okay. So whoever wants to do, you can just speak up. You should be able to unmute yourself and we see what we can do. I'll share my screen later with the Google Docs where I can type and there you will then also see what I'm talking about. Off we go. If you have no questions, we will just sit here for a few minutes in silence. Yeah, commemorate all the fallen German learners out there.
I entered my question, but it vanished. My question would be, how would you break up your time if you were, learning German using your program between the lessons, Anki, the other tools, maybe like having a speech partner to practice with? Like, how would you sort of divide your energy to get the best results?
Well, you have to define other tools. So Anki, I of course recommend nowadays, and the other tool to me is basically my course. Yeah, and a speech partner, I personally do not recommend, but sure, if you take this, we can talk about it. Why I'm not necessarily a fan, but if you have found one that works well for you, by all means, stick to it. So, what other tools do you mean?
Oh, I just mean like, with your program, there's also the grammar section where you can go really in depth, and there are some sort of built-in tools there. And then throughout the lessons, there are some different tools. So it's like, would you sort of schedule circling back to those tools every now and then just to keep things, make sure you're spot on, or like, how would you? Yeah.
Good question. So, in general, if you are confused or if you ask this question, I would suggest you stick to one thing. That is my course. The course is that simple. I understand that occasionally you want to veer off to do something different. Yeah, we don't like to eat spaghetti every day. We want to have a pizza in between. Yeah, so let's assume you're a normal human being that likes a bit of diversity. But in general, if you're confused, stick to the course. There's one button to click. You read the lesson, you work through everything on that page, you click complete and continue, you are done. It doesn't get simpler than that. So you don't need the grammar tool, which is there to fill certain gaps. If you feel like I didn't get the perfect right, I didn't get the article thing right. And instead of going back and forth in the course, which requires you to leave the track, you can use that grammar tool that is in the lower right corner behind the monster saying G. At the moment, it's a monster. Later on, the monster will be gone. It will be more accessible. But this is the general advice. Now, Anki is something you do on the toilet or while brushing your teeth or while riding a bus, wherever you don't have the calm to actually do proper learning. You can do before falling asleep, when waking up. That's when I was doing it, whenever I play with it. This is a gap filler and it is for your vocabulary. You collect the bricks to build your house, but you need to still build the house. So Anki is something you do in between whenever you feel like it. It can get boring it can get frustrating because there are certain words that simply won't stick. Yeah, there's nothing you can do except persist, continue. It will, at one point, reveal itself. It will stick. It's magic. But this is how you learn. You expose yourself enough and you make an effort. Say, now I'm going to make an effort. And with my decks, you have an advantage. You have the mnemonics. The mnemonics really work. And if they don't work for you, put in the effort to make your own. It's something you can learn. It takes a while. It's not natural. But I learned this when I was 18 years old, and that technique has stuck with me ever since. I'm 54 now. Yeah. So that's Anki. Speech partner. Sure. I mean, you have, depends on what you want to practice. What level are you, Craig? Remind me.
I am at the absolute tail end of your A22. A2, sorry.
So you have a speech partner, right? Or a tandem partner, we call that. What do you do with them?
We've only met once so far. It's just a recent addition to my portfolio. So we just met at the park. We talked for 25 minutes in English, 25 minutes in German.
And how is it going?
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, you enjoyed it? Did you plan this?
As far as planning what we were going to talk about, no, but just as far as, because I think for me, it was just helpful to also just be out of the house versus me just being at my computer for more and more time. So
yeah, I totally agree. And it can be fun, right? I had the same experience by chance when I was in Poland. I met a person in the computer room. You know, we had a computer room back in the days.
Yeah.
Personal computers were a thing, were not a thing yet. And he was a Poland. He spoke German and English, but he decided I needed Polish practice, and that actually worked quite well. It was painful, but it helped me a lot. So I understand, but that happened by chance. I didn't look for anyone. You might find at one point that you run out of topics or run out of depth, because at A22, there's only so much you can say.
Right.
And then it might turn into a drag. So be aware of that. What helps against that is planning ahead. You have access, well, you should have access to the Tandem training. I'm not sure whether that's still part of the bundle. Look through that. Written by Alessio. I read through it, of course. And there's some really nice tips. You don't have to do all at once. Pick one every meeting and see what it does to the quality of your meeting. Yeah, and that might ensure that you stick with that person.
Yeah.
I'm generally a bit skeptical about this, because if you put in a lot of effort, you have to put in quite some effort normally. You're lucky that you met someone at the park, but you need to put in a lot of effort to find someone, and then you need to click. And initially you click because you don't speak each other's languages that well. But you need a topic that binds you somehow. Yeah, you need a connection. Maybe you both collect stamps and then, oh, look at this Briefmarke. Ist das nicht schön? Yeah, so whatever you can talk about, I don't know. Yeah. So that is the one thing. So it's like with any relationship, you need to have something that binds you together. And that is often very difficult. Yeah. For many people, especially if there is not much in between, except the language learning part. Language learning is not necessarily too binding for too long, but give it a try. I'm not saying don't try, but plan. Plan and add structure to it. Yeah? Structure is the key. And at one point, you will not need the structure. We'll just have chats about God and the world. Gott und die Welt, we say. Yeah. Other tools you want to use, name one. I cut it out.
No, I mean, outside of your program, the outside speech partner, I mean, yes, speech partner was the only sort of additional thing I'd added so far.
No matter what course you work with, right? If you work with something that you can do from home, you work with it for a certain period of time. Ideally, you find the ideal amount of time. And it might be half an hour, might be an hour, might be 3 hours, but you have to pay attention to how you feel. Some people are good at punishing themselves by working 3 hours a day on their German. Other people have enough after half an hour. It depends on your goal, right? Your goal kind of determines how much time you kind of have to invest every day-ish. Yeah, because if you want to reach C1 in a year, you better invest 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
With half an hour a day, you will not reach that goal. Yeah, so you start with a goal, and that determines how much you should invest. And if you see that number is too much, too high, 3 hours a day is a torture for you, then you have to adjust your goal. That's all. There's nothing to it. And you seem young enough, whether it takes you 2 years longer to get to C1, if that's your goal, who cares? Yeah, but of course there's certain deadlines. Sometimes you just want the B1 for the visum and this is general advice. So make a plan. By when do you want to be where? And if you don't have that goal, also fine if you do it for leisure, but that determines your daily chore. And if you feel tired or bored with material, take a break, read a book, read a short story. Many people buy these short stories that people created for German learners. Sure, you can do that. It's still exciting at your level. I would recommend to buy really well-written short stories from renowned authors. I don't have anything behind me, but there's a couple of really nice short stories there that are thrilling. I think even Stephen King had a few, and he's a good writer. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's translated to German, but who cares? The translations are usually good.
Yeah.
So that excites you, and you don't have to understand everything. You start, even if you do one sentence a day, might keep you busy for 15 minutes to decipher, and not every sentence necessarily reveals itself to you, but do something fun. Watch a video, watch a Nena. I don't know what people listen to nowadays. Maybe Du bist nicht genug oder Du bist gut genug. What is that von Shirin David and the other guy? Yeah, okay. That's a big hype nowadays, or whatever you want to listen to. There's plenty of newcomers on the German market, and they even sing.
That sounds so popular. Sorry, I don't mean to interject. I first heard it inside our office, and then I started, saying "Du bist gut genug" along, and then I go to an Easy German Gold party last Friday, and then it comes on, everybody's jumping up and down. I'm like, what is it about this song?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It took me a while to get used to that. Not that I like the rest. The refrain is the best part, and there's a couple of memes. Yeah, like here's a word they replace gut genug with Arbeitszeitbetrug. Look in the chat. So Arbeitszeitbetrug means you cheat in your work time. So you do not really work. You pretend to work, but you're not really working. So.
Right.
Beautiful. Arbeitszeitbetrug. I don't know the melody, but look it up. It's fun on TikTok or something. So yeah. So you learned a new word today, Arbeitszeitbetrug. And I cannot even explain it, so I'm not sure whether you need to learn it. But so do something fun in between. In general, that's a good advice because you learn this also for fun, not just to get to a level. And my courses, as much as I love them, at one point it's good to take a break and do something else. I do my best to add stuff that is funny, right? And I'm working on a bigger project where you will have a little bit more diversity in the fun section. Right now I have songs, funny songs. I put some effort into that. And if you look at the songs and the refrains, there's always a hidden gem in these. And but whatever rocks your boat. Watch a series in German. It's something to get used to, the dubbing. But maybe an original German series also does the job. There's plenty of good ones as well. Dogs of Berlin, I think.
Babylon
Charité.
Berlin.
Which one?
Babylon Berlin.
They say, if that is your topic. Dark is a nice one, but it's not that easy to follow. I loved it though. Deutschland 83, I think. Deutschland 83. Beautiful one. Because it was more or less my teenage years, and they play the music from then, and it's a nice spy story about the GDR. Yeah, so don't forget the fun. Yeah, it's the biggest advice, and pay attention to how you feel. Yeah, does it help a little bit? And
I think the fun component is sort of one thing that I can work on a little bit more. So
you're not alone. Many people think I have to do this, I have to get through this as quickly as possible, and then the fun starts. But that's, if you ask me, it's a painful approach. The fun starts on day one. It should be fun to be able to understand a single sentence in a language. It's work, but it's rewarding as hell to get a sentence in a foreign language. Yeah. All right. And say anything else. So to all those who juggle many techniques and methods and materials, I would say stick to one course, yeah, something that's actually calling itself a course, and stick to that and add a little bit for the diversity, but you need a reliable structure. If you realize that after 4 to 6 weeks there's not any significant progress, then maybe try to change a thing or two and see. Always reflect. How is it going? And is it going well, or what's missing? Yeah. So many people out there trying course after course after course, app after app after app. That's not the solution. That's just running against the wall with your head until there's a big enough hole in there, which will never happen. Your head will burst before. Yeah. Think, analyze, understand. And I try to add elements of this into my courses so that you have to think, what am I doing? How am I doing? Am I doing it okay? And yeah. So be rational to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Genau. I met a person in the past. I always tell this story because I was fascinated. So he said, "Yeah, I learned 2,000 words with a dictionary because that's all she had," and I was amazed by that. So motivation can carry a long way, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that she learned some German this way, but at least she had a few words. So, yeah, good.
I tried the radio Tatort that you recommend, Michael, and I found very good. The sound effects are, you get into the story better. I really like it. Sometimes only it's difficult to understand because the sound effects are a bit loud for me. But I think it's good to challenge ourselves because in real life it's not always the perfect environment to understand everyone.
Yeah, the ARD Radio Tatort is actually splendid, but I recommend it more for listening to it in the background and occasionally tuning in. If you're B2, that's the one you can listen to that also for understanding. But as a beginner, you will not understand too much because it's just normal speech. People speak normally there. It's like a movie as a radio play, right?
Yeah, that's true. I understand maybe 30%.
Yeah, again, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, just for fun. And it's an atmosphere they create with the sound
Yes.
effects. It
Yes.
gives you an emotional connection to the German language, and that's something people underestimate.
Yeah, it's very nice, the emotional connection.
Yeah.
That's true. I recommend.
Also look up this song. I was at the European Song Contest. It's an Austrian song, but the Austrians speak some sort of German, I've heard. And it's called Tanzschein. It's a paper that allows you to go dancing. Beautiful, beautiful idea. Watch it. Watch the video. Yeah. Genau. When I was young, I somehow got my hands on an English version of Spaceballs, and I managed to extract the sound. Don't ask me how, because there was no digital anything there. And I was listening to it on my Walkman, and I actually possibly knew the whole movie by heart at that time. Well, that was good stuff. I had fun. I knew the movie inside out in German already, right? So if you can, maybe you find an audio track of some series or some movie. I don't think it's necessarily legal unless you own it. Maybe you have a DVD and can extract the sound from there. If you don't spread it in the internet, it might be actually fine. And that's lovely to go along.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's emotional. It's fun. Yeah. I did this many times, but audiobooks in general, or audio plays even more. Audiobooks, there's one person reading, and if it's a good reader, it's bearable. But audio plays is different people. It's like a movie, just a little bit with more effects and more guidance, and that is actually fun to listen to. Yeah.
Good idea. I have a question. Do you know maybe any app if someone would like to practice speaking?
I can't recommend any app to practice speaking, simply because I have not heard much good from that, especially as a woman. So it's always a bit difficult. You can, in some apps, check who is allowed to contact you. And if you then pick women, can contact women, that's possibly the wiser move. People usually don't hang out long enough with you in these apps. That's what I've heard. You
I
might be
see.
lucky. It's like with anything, yeah. But I think it's like, I'm not sure if we ever use something like Tinder, yeah, some dating app. You have to swipe a lot of times into the direction of I don't want to,
I see.
until you find Mr. or Mrs. Right. Yeah.
I see, understand. So it's
And
better in real life.
ideally, yeah. So
Yes.
in live or in-person meetups is something I recommend to at least try. I myself went to several German learning meetups. It's not necessarily something that fits my personality. I don't like big agglomerations of people, but you meet people there. Even I met people there,
Yes.
and be ruthless to an extent that you really feel, is that someone I want to meet more often with, because it's fun or there's a connection. Look for the connection. Don't just do it because you want to practice German with someone. That's not a connection.
Makes sense.
Not strong enough, at least. Yeah. I've a friend of mine had an English Tandem, which is language exchange, and there was a younger lady. He was 30 at that time. She was possibly 22. She was mainly interested in shopping, and he had absolutely no clue how you could talk about shopping for longer than 2 minutes. And that was a disaster to watch. It was painful. I came later and I just observed, and I was like, yeah, so there must be a connection somehow. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have to be rude. You can be gentle and say, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it. Yeah. Because you don't do yourself any favors. And I've been in similar situations as well with the Turkish Tandem in the past. It's not easy to find people that you really click with. Yeah, and the apps make it even worse because it's anonymous and yeah. But try. There is a couple, but I don't name them here because I really am not convinced that any of them do the job well enough for my, or in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. I have another question. It's about pronunciation. I kind of cannot see the difference between U umlaut and O umlaut. Like,
Let me see. Let me share my screen, maybe. Here we go. Content only. Maybe this over the shoulder. Yeah, let's try this one. That looks funny. Sorry, I'm trying this. I'm trying the new design options here. Share sound, no. Optimize for video sharing. How do I start? Share. Okay, you see me, right?
yes.
My best to. So you have hören and Ohren, for example. So the O umlaut and the O. So how would you pronounce both of them?
The first one I just say like a hören, and the other is like a more normal oren.
I hear no problem. Where is your problem so far?
One is the letter, the first one, and when you have the U with the 2 dots.
Ah, you mean the U. I heard
Yes.
the O. Okay.
Because I found both of them very similar, like hören or let's say möchten, I think is the word, maybe.
I'm getting there.
Exactly. Küchen, yes. So I think they are very
Let's take
similar.
a look. Can you try the 2 in the middle?
Küchen.
Very good.
Yes. But hören, when I say hören, I think is kind of the same.
Say it again.
Hören, Küchen.
It's quite a difference. I hear the difference.
Okay.
You might not hear it, but you say it nicely. How do you say the other
Okay.
one without the umlaut, under Küchen?
Kuchen.
Flawless.
Okay.
How do you say the other ones on the right?
Möchten. So it's like O and Y, something between O and Y.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. It's
And the
strange
other
because
one?
I don't hear the difference. Mochten.
Say it again.
Mochten. The second, mochten.
Yeah. So excellent. I can say them and you hear. Yeah, I start from the left and go to the right and then the last one at the bottom. So hören, Ohren. Hören, Ohren. Küchen, Kuchen.
And could you say, Michael, again, but separate the letter O umlaut and the U umlaut?
I will do in a second. Let me finish the möchten, mochten. So I can do the upper row. Hören, Küchen, möchten. You hear the difference? I repeat.
No.
I repeat. Hören, Küchen. I prolong this a little bit, yeah? So the Küchen would be normal. Hören, Küchen, möchten.
And what I meant, if you could say like U and U. Like, if you mean like not in the word, but kind of like
Alone.
Yes, exactly.
Why would you want to say this alone? Do you have to spell things a lot?
No, just to see the difference. But okay, if I think the most important, if people understand me, that's the most important. Because sometimes I saw on YouTube videos that people are spelling them separately, and there is small difference, but there is not much difference. So I was thinking if there is any tip.
Küchen, Kuchen is quite a big difference for German ears. Möchten, mochten, mö, mo. Ku, ho. Yeah, if I
and the hören and Küchen.
Yeah, let's say Horen doesn't exist, but ho. You hear a difference if I only pronounce the O and the Ö?
Yeah.
Next one, ku, and mo. You pronounce them well, and I'm pretty sure you can hear this, right? And last one, logen,
Lügen. Okay.
Yeah. Lügen is a real word. Logen means they lied, and Lügen is they would lie.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
Thank
not
you.
telling the truth. So I have a pronunciation trainer, or where you practice distinguishing these sounds on my homepage. If you go to smartergerman.com, and you can not sure whether you can see this. Do you see my homepage now?
Yes.
No. Okay, cool. So there's something called Toolbox. Yeah, doesn't matter. And somewhere you see all my little exercises here and games and everything. So you see a couple of things here. You can even go minimal pairs, and you see here O versus Ö.
Yes,
there should be
exactly.
U versus Ü. Yeah, you me too.
I will check this one.
Yeah, and that.
Konnte.
So, for example, it plays one word. You have to decide which one you heard. If you do this plenty of times or many times, you will learn to slowly distinguish both by listening alone. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my courses, there is also pronunciation exercises where you speak, or speaking exercises, and they will help you to practice that. But you do fine. You just need to continue.
Okay.
But do you have any indication that people don't understand you or misunderstand you because of this?
No, it's just I wanted to make sure that I don't sound like different, like between these two letters. But if you say this, okay, that's good. No, nobody told me that they don't understand. But yeah, I don't know. I think my level is too low still to
What
be
level are you?
understood at all.
What level are you?
It's like I understand a bit. You can probably understanding is B, but speaking is A1, because I used to speak German like more than 10 years ago, and I forgot everything. But there is some information there, so I'm kind of refreshing.
Take your time. First of all, nobody's born perfect. That means it takes months, if not years, to perfect the way you speak, your pronunciation and intonation. Yeah. So take it one by one. This actually was fine. What is also important is the whole sentence melody, which is why the passive listening is something you can do, or you might want to do. There's not necessarily too strong scientific evidence, but it doesn't harm to expose yourself to natural sounding German by listening to these radio Tatorts. Yeah? You get a feeling for the melody and you might copy
Yes.
it intuitively. The one thing, so what often I recently had again someone who said, "Oh, why doesn't your course teach the alphabet?" Well, it does, because people complain there's no alphabet. But honestly, if it was according to what I've learned, the alphabet is the least important thing to study, because you really rarely need individual letters and their pronunciation. Only when you start spelling your name and your address, which will come as soon as you can have a phone call or go somewhere and have a conversation already in German. So it doesn't have to happen before A2 even. And it's a boring lesson anyhow.
Yes.
Same with numbers. You learn the numbers as you go. That's just vocabulary. There's not much to learn. There's a couple of interesting tweaks with the numbers, which are lovely, and I teach that. But you don't need individual letter pronunciation. Yeah. But you need to be able to distinguish Ö and O. Yeah, for sure. It's a difference if you say ich mochte dich or ich möchte eine Pizza. Or ich mochte eine Pizza, ich möchte
Yes.
eine Pizza. Yeah.
Exactly. You just say whatever I wanted to hear, like ooh, oh. So now like separate, so I could see the difference, like ooh, oh, something like this. Yeah.
And the context, you see, the context also clarifies this. The context would tell me, oh, she wants a pizza now, or she talks about when she was young, she loved pizza. It's unmistaken. Like you cannot misunderstand this necessarily,
Yes.
if the context is a little bit clear.
Yeah,
So
context is important. It's
don't
like
worry too
learning.
much.
Yeah, like learning separate words is not so effective like learning from the context.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's why my Anki decks are not random words. Yeah, there's Anki decks. Anki decks are vocabulary lists, basically. There's lists out there that say the top 5,000 German words you need to know. No context. And it's just a waste of time. Sure, you can hammer them into your brain, and if you don't mind, but it makes no sense to do that. Do something, have a short story, create your own vocabulary from it. You can use AI if you don't mind, and then it creates that for you. And then you hammer those words into your brain, and then you can read the story. That's a rewarding activity for after torturing yourself with flashcards. Yeah. So that's a possibility to use that. But don't just hammer random vocabulary into your brain. It doesn't make sense. No.
I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah, does that help a little bit? So
yes, thank you very much.
Don't worry too much about this. If you realize you've been misunderstood, you go home and the first shock is over. You try to remember, what did I say? What did it sound like? Good enough. And then you look deeper into that one part where you have been misunderstood. Yeah.
Yes,
But you're more likely to be misunderstood if you use wrong words than these little things that you just pointed out.
Yes, okay. I understand. I guess I was too much into details because it's normal that I will never sound like a native German. So I think as long people understand me, this is the most important.
Well, if you want to and want to dedicate your whole life to sounding native German, you can possibly. But why? What's the point?
Yeah, it's just communication, and it's the most important.
Yeah, we have a couple of stars that speak broken German. There's a lot of German. Arnold Schwarzenegger made it in Hollywood. I don't think that his English was perfect when he started. Huh?
Yeah.
So yeah, don't stress this too much. As long as people understand you, and from what I hear, I think you're really worrying too much about this. You sound great.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah, my pleasure. So there was a question about ear, my favorite topic. Let's see whether I can wing this. So I share my screen again. So the problem with ear is I'm not sure, maybe 2 of them are capitalized. There's plenty of these. Let me, give me a minute to think. For example, Ihr Hund bellt. I can have that also like this. Ihr Hund bellt. Ich spreche mit ihr. Small. And what else do we have? Yeah, okay. Ihr. There's one more that will come over time. So I normally in the beginning you capitalize the first letter. I consciously didn't do this, and when I did this, you can also do it like this. He says, your dog is barking. Yeah. So this makes it clearer. He says, so first of all, this one, does anyone know what the first one means? Sagt, ihr Hund bellt. Lowercase ihr.
He said that, or he says that her dog barked.
Yes. Yeah. Her dog barks. It's a present tense, no? So here the ear means her, and you see the relation between ear and her. It's basically the same word, just jumbled around. We have the H, we have the E, and the R. In German, we just don't use the E, we use an I. But it's basically the same word. Second one, who knows that one? Sorry, he says. He says.
I think it's you, but like a formal.
Your dog barks, sir, ma'am. Yeah. So this is the formal address. I talk to you and I'm formal with you because I don't know you and I like to keep my distance. That's why the capital I. Yeah, I put a capital I between you and me, so don't come too close. But so it means your, but the formal you. Last one. There's two more. I found the other one. So ich spreche mit ihr. What does that mean?
With her?
Yeah. Or I speak with her. Yeah. So again, we have a her, but this is a different her. Up here, we have her dog. So what's the difference between the first and the third her? Some grammar. In English, it's her. So it's all her. That's the problem for you. But in German, it's obvious.
Possessive pronoun versus just personal pronoun?
There's grammaticians who would say that's correct. I am more precise. I follow Eisenberg. So the Ihr Hund, the ear is an article. It precedes a noun, and therefore it's an article, no matter what you argue. Whether I'm, so grammaticians are not necessarily agreeing on the terminology. Yeah. So you're not wrong. That's what you hear. But an article is much clearer. It is much more logical because it precedes a noun. A pronoun, the sense pronoun means instead of a noun. So it doesn't fit the first ear. It's not replacing a noun. It's accompanying a noun. Therefore, it is an article in my terminology, and not only mine. And the third one is a personal pronoun. Do you know which case?
Dative.
Yeah. So you don't say with she. Yeah. In English, you also have to change the she to the her, and the same in German. So you don't say mit sie. Yeah. It's not how we do it. So you have to change it to the dative. Why is it the dative?
One, because it's with mit.
Yeah. The mit always requires you to use the dative afterwards. Okay. Ihr sagt, der Hund bellt. Let's stick to the barking one. So we have another ear here. What is that then? Wait, no? About correct feel free. What does it mean? Ihr sagt, der Hund bellt. Dog barks is clear, right?
So, like you, sir, you, madam.
No. You guys.
Yes.
So it's two people you are familiar with. Friends.
Right. Yes.
If it was not familiar people, you wouldn't say ear. Yeah. So these are the four ears. And as you can see, they look the same. The only thing that might save you is sagt, ihre Katze miaut. So the first ear can take different endings because it's an article. So it can take any of the different article endings, like der, das, die, dem, den, des. So it can take the same depending on its function here. But the other ones, they are always ihr. They never get an ending. Well, sorry, my apologies. The second one as well, just with a capital I, because it's also an article. But the other two are pronouns. The other two are pronouns. They never get an ending. Yeah, you will never have mit ihre, full stop. If there's a noun following, that's different. For example, let me quickly do this. Mit ihrer Mutter. So if you add a noun afterwards, the ihr turns into an article. And then it needs an ending. And that is what tortures most German learners, adding the right ending. But if you stop the sentence here, there's nothing to add. And you never have, not sure, you never have this. Because that word it doesn't exist as a pronoun. The capital ihr doesn't exist as a pronoun. What is the proper pronoun if I wanted to say, I speak with you, sir, madam?
Ihnen.
Exactly. You know, wie geht es Ihnen? This is the same. So you would have to use that one. You cannot use this one. And what is an Ihnen, an article or a pronoun?
That's a pronoun.
Because?
You can use it standalone without.
There's no noun following.
Yeah.
If there's no noun following, it's not an article. Simple as that. It's very simple grammar. Huh? When you speak, this is a different thing. So you need to prepare this, but at least you need to understand there's these four possibilities. You practice differentiating them, distinguishing them from each other, and it becomes more and more clear. But if you only see them once out of context, you never put any conscious thought into this, they're just confusing you, of course. I have a full master class in my course about ear, possibly 45 minutes, if not an hour, where I take my time. But I basically say what I shared here in the last 10 minutes. Yeah, I give more examples there. But that's the requirement. You need to understand what are the differences. And then next time you come across the ear, it doesn't get an ending because there's no noun following, and so on. No. So understanding is the first step. Using it then ideally requires understanding, unless you learn everything by heart. Yeah, wie geht es Ihnen? You learn by heart. You don't understand. Yeah. Why do you say wie geht es Ihnen? Who knows? Who knows? Why do you say Ihnen? Why not wie geht es Sie?
Because of geben.
Because of gehen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, gehen in the sense of how are you requires the dative. How do you know? Do the Smarter German course, and of course you know that.
Yeah.
But how do you know? Seriously.
Just sort of getting used to. I'm definitely still at the beginner stage, but trying to get used to which verbs automatically go dative, which verbs automatically go.
And if you don't know that, how do you know? How do you find out which verbs go with the dative? Simple answer always, by the way. And it's usually only one answer. Same with an article. How do you know the article of any noun? If I say the word Mikrofon, what is the article? How do you know? Or I say Topf. Let's say Topf. You don't know Topf. How do you know which article you have to use? You guess, 30% chance.
Right.
Answer is always dictionary. Look it up. I didn't know. Yeah, I heard it 1,000 times and somehow I picked it up. I read a lot of books as a child, possibly. I don't know. So if I hear a new word and I don't know the gender, I look it up in a dictionary. Every German has to do that. New words. So do you. So there is nothing to figure out. With Topf, I cannot see what gender that word has. Gehen, I wouldn't know. How do I know? There's no indication. It doesn't look like a dative verb. What would that look like? So, yeah. So this is something I explain in my German cases masterclass where I go really through all cases and what they do, what they're about, and how can you know. And in general, the case depends on two things. And both of them are present in this little presentation. First, you had here mit, a preposition. You have a preposition, case is clear. You've learned that mit is with dative, and there's other dative ones or accusative ones. And the second factor that decides the case, you have here geht, the verb. So it's either a preposition or a case, a preposition or a verb that decides which case you have to use. And that's it. There's very few fixed expressions that we don't care about. You don't have to care about until C1.
I was going to say, would you say that there's a third category? Because I don't want to use case when there's something receiving something.
No, that's also, so that, well, it's not wrong. For example, ich gebe meiner Mutter einen Kuss. I give my mother a kiss. Yeah? So children do that. Or you do that when you say goodbye. Now, you have two cases here. Do you know which case? So meiner Mutter, Mutter is feminine, therefore this must be
dative.
So Kuss is masculine, and you see en ending, therefore this must be accusative. So now we have two cases, and this is because of geben. So the rule is still a verb decides.
Right.
And
right,
then
okay. Yeah.
which of the two elements we have is dative accusative is decided by the recipient versus the thing that is being received.
Yeah.
And the recipient in these cases, only there, is always the dative, while the thing that is received is always the accusative. But only in these cases. What many learners mix up is they think the recipient of something always is dative. That's not right. For example, ich küsse I kiss my mother. The mother is the recipient of my kiss. So if you mistake this rule, you would think, oh, there's a recipient, so it has to be dative, but this is wrong.
Right.
Because it's not geben.
Right.
It's not a verb that takes two objects. So I kiss my mother is the accusative. But this is another whole life class, verbs with two objects. Yeah, it's fun. But you do this one by one. If you do all of this at once, you get confused, of course. And trust me, I've heard this. Okay, I stopped screen sharing because I think my mobile phone is running out of. No, it's still fine. Right? It's another thing. So cover one thing, go to the next, go to the next. And if something is unclear, don't just move to the next thing. Ask what is unclear. It might be that you are a little bit ahead of what you should do. That happens. Language is not structured this way naturally. But in general, it is you pass through a grammar lesson and yeah, it's okay, but you haven't practiced it enough. It's not clear. Make sure it's clear. I hope nothing I said today was in any way unclear. Yeah. Now you've seen it, but you need to practice it 100 times, and then you get the feeling for it. And then you can use it, and then you can correct yourself when you misuse it. But rushing through things leads to the German I hear day in, day out, and I have to correct and have to answer questions about. Like that one you just asked is a very common question. Yeah. German is not a complex language. It's just a problem that you are rushed through the grammar, especially if you go to a class, or think you need to rush through a course. Then you take a risk. Yeah, and not everyone is a fast learner. There's nothing bad about being slow. You have a question, but I don't understand what you mean by any advice for self-learners. I have a million advice for self-learners, but what is your question? Yeah. So if the question is not clear, the answer can only be something generic and therefore not helpful for anyone. You have a question like, how do I learn der, die, das? That's a different thing. I can answer that very easily. No? But you need to put some effort into the question, and then I can answer it. Otherwise, I'd be talking for the next 5 hours. I think I learned by myself through YouTube. How do you perfect your grammar? That's a better question, because I can share a little bit of my experience. YouTube is not something that can replace a proper German course or whatever form the German course has. YouTube is a randomly put together platform that provides you with input you can work with. But how you work with it or what you study, it has no structure whatsoever. Even if you have a playlist, that's not really a structure. The other downside of YouTube is you do not get any feedback. You do not have to think. Yeah, you just consume, you perceive, and you might think you understand, but if you cannot put it to the test and have no feedback on how you put it to the test, you might be learning some completely different language than German. Maybe it's Dutch you're learning, yeah, even though they say something else. So YouTube is at best something where you find something to relax, to enjoy, to have fun, yeah, to watch cat videos like we do now. Yeah? But it's not a learning platform ever. Yeah, it doesn't mean you cannot learn information there, but to learn German, that's not the right platform, in my opinion. But give it a try if you have no money and that's the only way. But you will never know if you have no structure. You will not know what have I done already, what do I still have to do, where am I in my learning process. Yeah, and that simply prolongs your learning significantly. You look young, so you pick up a lot of things, but you might pick up things that are broken, and then you're stuck with broken stuff because you've practiced the broken German for 100 times, and you think it's right German. I've heard many people that spoke fluent German, but it was a pain to figure out what they wanted to say because it was broken. But they were convinced that was good German, and that happens when you don't get feedback. Yeah, and the feedback doesn't have to be a person or a teacher. It can also be a simple tool nowadays. Nowadays, even AI is pretty good. So you can ask AI for feedback. Occasionally, it still lies through its teeth, but it's better than watching YouTube. But I wouldn't even recommend to just work with AI either, simply because AI forgets everything unless you really, really know what you're doing, and you don't, because you asked this question. So you need a structure, especially when you ask this question. So perfect your grammar. Why do you want to perfect your grammar? What do you mean by this? There's two kinds of grammars. There's knowledge about grammar. It's a 200 pages book, maybe 300. You can learn all the rules by heart. Sure, doesn't harm. But it doesn't necessarily mean you speak right or you write right or whatever you want to do with a language. Yeah. Grammar alone, grammar is beautiful. It helps you to monitor your learning and your output. You can recognize if I ever make a mistake, I can then realize, oh, I made a mistake because that and that rule, or that's not how you say it. So grammar is a helpful tool, but it's only a tiny part of a huge dish. Yeah. So you have a nice dish you want to eat. You just look at the flour. The flour alone is not tasty. You need to prepare it in a certain way. You need to mingle it with other stuff, and then it becomes a beautiful pizza. Stick with my analogy. Yeah. With people every day, but I lack correct sentence structure when it comes to argue about something. Well, if you lack correct sentence structure when you argue about something, I also would assume you lack correct sentence structure in all other areas. Why would you lack the structure, especially there? If you get emotional, sure, but then the problem is not the language, then the problem is the emotion, yeah, and the handling of the emotion. So how do you know you lack correct sentence structure? And if you know that you lack the sentence structure, what is holding you back from looking up how does sentence structure work? Sentence structure is relatively clear in German. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time left. I cannot explain that in 3 minutes. But here's the one rule. Put the verb in the second position. And if you have two verbs, put the smaller one that has no meaning in the second position and the one with the meaning to the end. We call this the Satzklammer, the Satzklammer, the sentence bracket. Yeah, heavy metal. This is when you have two verbs. Yeah. So fluent in grammar like in sentence structure. So grammar is more about the rules and patterns that of course influence the sentence structure. Sentence structure is how you really put things together, and then of course the grammar plays a role in that because you need to pick the right endings of everything, because there can be quite a few endings you have to consider. Yeah. And if you forget something, first of all, you look younger than 88 years and you don't look like you have dementia. I cannot tell that from here, but let's assume you're not demented yet. Forgetting for younger people usually means you have not fully internalized this yet. You have not learned it. Learning means you know it. It's not just it clicked once and then you can use it. You need to practice it. If sentence structure is unclear, you haven't practiced correct sentence structure sufficiently. And that doesn't mean learning sentences by heart. It simply means to understand why is the sentence that I say wrong. So if you notice already that your sentences are wrong, that's a good thing. Something you can work with. Take note of 3 sentences in every conversation afterwards, or record your own speaking. Careful, cannot record other people. And then afterwards, look at it and see, what did you do wrong? Yeah. So if you analyze the way you speak, you will focus on the vocabulary and sentences that you use regularly, and you can improve on that first before you go into some fantastic stuff. Yeah. So you need conscious practice. YouTube is not the right platform. Speaking with people is not studying the language. It doesn't give you enough space to analyze, to understand, because you have a social situation in which you want to perform. You want to please, you want to understand and be understood. That's not a learning situation. You learn emotionally, and this is a practice situation. But you take all this experience, go home, and then you look at what happened here. And you analyze, you understand. This is how you make use of such situations. So get a course, whatever that is. If you don't have money, you find something. There is something from the German government, you will find that. Yeah, if you search this. But get a structure. No structure, you will always have gaps, and you will be filling these gaps until the end of days. And it's not that difficult. Again, German language grammar is 250 pages if you narrow it down. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you live. You can learn fluent German also in India. Don't think that coming here before you've mastered B1 or B2 ideally has many benefits. Most people actually struggle more being here than being at home, because at home you have a safe space. You can study in peace. Here you have to deal with bureaucracy, with money, with life, with culture, with so many things, which is thrilling and enjoyable in itself, but it doesn't allow for much space to sit down and study properly. Yeah, for many people. So careful there. It's not a given. If you have enough money and don't have to take care of anything and don't have to work or worry, yeah. So then yeah, sure, come. For the exam, last OSD-Prüfung, so why do you do the ÖSD, the Austrian language diploma thing? Why do you not do TELC, or Goethe, which is also available in India? Doesn't matter. They are all more or less similar. And for the exam, I can only say get your hands on as many trial exams as possible and hammer through them and work the way I just described. Look at what goes wrong, what is not clear, make sure it's clear, then try again. Learn from your mistakes. Yeah? I have a B1 exam preparation course included in my membership that also teaches you tips and tricks how to make best use of the little you know or the lot you know, so that you have a lot more time in an exam to actually make use of all this. Yeah. yeah, again, it's nothing wrong with doing the ÖSD, the Austrian one. Just curious. Okay. Anything urgent left? Because we are now an hour in. I think we had a couple of really nice topics today. As I said, all these things are treated in much more detail in my courses, of course. Yeah. And check out the membership. You can always try this free for either the first lesson or 7 days, depends on where you live a little bit. And no risk, just fun. Yeah. And it's all very doable. That's always what I want to say. It is only overwhelming if you think you lost the oversight and you think it's such a huge monster to kill. My analogy for this is use the elephant technique to study German, to master German. The old people know it. Greg, come do me the favor. What's the elephant technique? How do you eat an elephant? Say it again.
You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant? Yeah. The German language is your elephant. Eat it one bite at a time, and you'll be fine. Many people have eaten the German learning elephant, the German language elephant. So many elephants to eat. Okay. Thank you very much for your time and your attention and your questions. Yeah. You're welcome every week. For now, I do them weekly until I lose interest or you lose interest, who knows. And you always find me on smartergerman.com or in my courses. Dankeschön. Auf Wiedersehen.
Vielen Dank.
Wiedersehen.
Schönen Abend.
Bye.